in this bank along with the state and everybody else, and be a customer of it and get reduced bond rates and all the savings that come from owning your own bank. The really wonderful piece about this will be that we're always looking for new revenue. Well, that's the great thing about a bank. It will be a bank. It's going to make money for the people of the state. So it will generate new revenue without raising taxes. Boy, that's like the holy grail, right? Mm-hmm. So there is one model. Actually, there's a lot of models around the world because public banking is a well-respected financing strategy that almost all developing countries and even developed countries have used to become developed. We in the United States are an anomaly in that sense. We don't rely on public banking, we rely on commercial banks. Hence our current public financing crisis. We don't have enough money to maintain the infrastructure that we have now. The American Society of Civil Engineers has given us, they upgraded us from a D to a C minus, I think. But even so, I don't know how they improved it since we haven't been able to. We are at our debt capacity right now. We cannot borrow more money to maintain infrastructure until we've paid off 25-year-old debt, and that opens up some debt capacity according to a formula that's based on our general revenues and all that other stuff, but you don't want to know about all that. The point is that we can, by creating our own bank, retain control over our tax revenues, and then we get to reinvest it into our communities as we feel necessary. So the one model I'm going to let you know about is the Bank of North Dakota. North Dakota is the only state in the country that owns its own bank, and it has just celebrated its 100th anniversary this year. The Bank of North Dakota last year in its annual report, the president's message reported that 15th consecutive year of record profits for the people of the state of North Dakota. So 15 years of record profits means during the Great Recession, it was making a record profit because it was investing back in the community. It wasn't gambling on derivatives and other cockamamie schemes. They were putting money back into their own local economy. And with that 15% profit, 15th consecutive year of profit, they actually returned 18% ROI. So that's an astounding rate of return when you consider our state investment board, which is doing a great job under the parameters that it's constrained by. But their target level is 6.5% to 7% return, and the Bank of North Dakota just returned 18%. So you can see how, and the reason that it can banks make this kind of money is due to the financing, the accounting practices that banks are allowed to use that no other corporation is allowed to use, because they only have to keep 10% of their outstanding loan portfolio as cash on hand. So that means that if we capitalized a bank with, say, $100 million, that actually, as long as it's the depository for all of our tax revenue, and we've got over $9 billion, we just wrote a $54 billion biannual budget at the state. If we capitalized a bank with $100 million, that actually leverages out to $1 billion worth of lending capacity. Imagine the kind of infrastructure we can not just maintain or create new, but we could build a facility for our children that can finance an infrastructure for them that we can't even imagine what it looks like now. Things like high-speed rail, or even just building enough schools so that we can meet the initiative that cuts class sizes down by half. If you cut class sizes by half, what does that mean? You have to have twice as many classrooms. We cannot afford to build that many schools. So even though the people pass the initiative and they want to do good work like that, we just can't finance it under our current strategy. So I see the bank as being an inevitable creation very soon, because otherwise our infrastructure is just going to continue to crumble around us, and our children have no hope for being able to finance anything in the future. So I know that I only have a few minutes to give you this very high-level presentation on it, but I'm happy to use the couple minutes I have left to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Corman.
And Senators, thank you for being here, and I've heard this proposal before, and I've really liked it. I've been really intrigued. Another way to look at it is that U.S. Bank, as a private company, is benefiting from all the investments by the people, right?
Correct.
And what does that amount to, do you think? Is it 1 or 2% of all the money at any given time that we've collected in taxes, that we've got in the bank, is actually just transferring over to U.S. Bank? Is that what we're looking at right now?
I think all your money's going to them if they're the depository for your general fund.
Right, it's going there, but then we obviously withdraw the money, but that's minus their banking fees and minus
Yes.
the interest rate difference that between what they're collecting and what they're offering us for savings, right? So,
Yes.
I don't know if you've-
What happens is your deposits are allowing them to leverage their equity capital that much more. So they can invest, I don't know what the equity capital is in US Bank, but say it's $100 billion, which I'm sure it's more than that. But they can leverage that out to $1 trillion worth of loans just by making sure that they have enough depositors flowing that much deposits through. Because the thinking, the reason that banks can leverage that way is an old banking theory, which is fractional reserve lending. And they say that no depositors are going to all come, no more than 10% of your depositors at any given
Right.
time are all going to ask for their money back at the same time,
Right.
unless there's a run on the bank. So that's why they have a risk reserve lending program or funding and that sort of thing. And they have FDIC insurance, and they also have Congress, which is willing to bail them out at any given
Yeah.
time. So it's coming out of our pockets anyway. So why not invest in ourselves? And so my ask is that you consider bringing this to the attention of the Association of Cities and maybe putting it on the legislative agenda for the association.
Oh, Mr.
Other
Mayor?
cities are doing that.
I would like to thank you. I know you've worked hard on this. It sounds like you've helped, you're part of a coalition, but I know you've worked personally very hard to make this happen, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Any other questions for the senator? Really appreciate you being here today, Bob, and I know that there'll be more discussions with the council and even possibly if they come up with more questions or whatever, we could invite you back for a committee of the whole or another
Happy to
presentation.
come back anytime. You're
Okay.
my district. And by the way, Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for your great work over your last, is it 3 terms now?
Yeah, 3 terms.
So I still am hoping for that ride in your new rig.
Absolutely.
I brought mine because you want to compare them,
Yeah, I
but
know, we have to race one of these days, but
around the loop.
I can only get away with that for a couple more weeks. Thank you very much,
Okay,
Senator.
thank you,
Appreciate you being
Council.
here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, now we're going to move on to a public hearing. Jan Hahn.
Thank you, Mayor Law. The city is required to hold public hearings prior to the adoption of the mid-biennium budget and the setting of the property tax rate for the upcoming year. The first public hearing was held back on October 21st. Tonight represents the second and final public hearing. All of our public hearings have been appropriately noticed and provide the opportunities for stakeholders to provide their input. All of the details of the proposed update, mid-biennium update, have been discussed with council and are posted on the city's website. So with that, I will turn it back over to you to open up the public hearing.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a public hearing. The council have any questions of Jan?
Oh, I have about 100. No.
I know you've been briefed on, thank you, Senator. You've been briefed on all of this over a number of weeks, so this is a public hearing. Is there anybody in the public that had any comments in regards to the mid-biennium budget? Okay, seeing none, what's the council's
I move
wish?
the public hearing be closed.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Person, seconded by Mr. Pavoni, that the public hearing be closed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Jan. Moving on to administrative report, Mr. Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. I have one item for you this evening. The next Homeless Community Resource Event will be held at the Renton Downtown Library on November 8th from 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. There will be providers in healthcare, housing, public transportation, human services, infant care, and more, all in this one location. Free flu shots will also be available for those 18 and up. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to audience comments, we have one person signed up to address the council. When I call your name, please come to the podium, give your name and city of residence for the record, and you have 5 minutes. Carl Kaminke?
Yeah, I've been here before. Same story, same problem, the midnight racers out on the road down there. They're still there, they're still out there. Cops can't get a hold of them, can't get a hang of them. And now I guess they can't go past 43rd Street because that's now Kent. So they can race almost all night long from Harley Davidson to the spot. And when the cops show up, they just go across and raise havoc on the other side of 43rd. Why the cops can't get together with the officers of Renton? Is it too much to ask to get those guys off the streets some way or another? Bottle them all up, hit them with excessive noise, get them for their license plates, get them for their driver's licenses, put them in a big portal there and just hold them until you get them all done. Make it tough for them guys to throw the cops over a barrel. It's getting to be ridiculous. Now they have an all clear sign. Bam, 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 bam. Means they can go home now. I heard that 2 weekends in a row from down by the spot. I live up behind, off from the Harley Davidson shop. I can see that, and all the noise just comes right up. But that's it for that. I'm not gonna give up. I'll be back again if it keeps up. Now for the next problem is the street I live on, South 32nd Street. It's getting to be a racetrack for people going from Benson Drive down to Talbot. To the hospital, or they're avoiding the stoplight at 21st. They're avoiding the stoplight down 43rd. There's not one stop sign or speed sign from Benson Drive all the way down to Talbot. You go from Benson Drive to southeast 172nd to Cedar Avenue, down South 35th to Main, down South 34th to Wells, Wells down to Smithers, all the way down to Talbot. There's not one stop sign, not one slow sign. Going up the hill, there's one stop sign about 100 feet up on South 32nd Street, which has been obscured by a bunch of leaves on a tree there, but it makes any that much difference anyway. And over on, I think it's South 38th, they have a sign that says how fast you're going down 38th. And that's within 100 feet of a stop sign. Now, maybe we could get something like that on 32nd or one of these others down the hill streets. Might slow people down. I think even the school buses speed through there now. So it's, you know, I've lived there for 30 years. You never used to go all the way through. Now it goes through. Well, people have found out that it goes through, so they're up, taking the shortcut up to the Benson. Anything you guys can do would be appreciated.
Okay, we certainly will, and I know you've been here before, and I know we've referred this to the police. I'm sorry I missed that meeting tonight. Did they discuss this at all with the speeding racing update, or is that still?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
this is a whole different issue.
Yeah, so I know we did some studies on that, so I'll make sure that you're notified of whatever we're finding and as they explore some of these options.
I don't know if nobody else is, I call 911, you know, like you said to do. And they say, well, get an officer out there, and, you know, when they get there, they see him coming, or they quit. And then he says, well, do you want us to call you back? No, at 2:30, I hope to be sleeping.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And then, no, what we all could do is go down on a Saturday night at 1 o'clock when the spotlight's out and just sit there and watch them. I'd be glad to do that.
Yeah.
I'd have to take a nap from 8 to 12. but
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks, you too. Moving on to the consent agenda, we have 8 items for council consideration. Is there any item a council member like pulled for discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
Seeing
Mr.
none, I
Person.
move the consent agenda be adopted as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Person, second by Mr. Pavoni, that the consent agenda be adopted as read. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, moving on to unfinished business, Mr. Person.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have one report for the mid-biennium budget adjustment.
Okay, Committee of the Whole Committee Report, 2019-2020 Mid-Biennium Budget Amendment. The Committee of the Whole reviewed the proposed 2019-2020 Mid-Biennium Budget Amendment of $7,804,570 over the 2 years for an adjusted appropriation of $707,575,570 for the biennium, and recommends concurrence in the following actions. 1, property tax levy ordinance, set the 2020 property tax levy plus the new construction, annexation, and administrative refunds at $22,012,189 based on the preliminary worksheet provided by King County Assessor's Office. 2, renaming the 1% for Arts Fund 125 to the Municipal Arts Fund 125. Staff recommends renaming this 1% for Arts Fund to the Municipal Arts Fund. Changes to authorized positions. The proposed budget will add a total of 2.5 positions and make pay classification adjustments for another 9 positions. The 9 pay classification adjustments have been previously approved by City Council. These changes and the 3.5 positions added during the first and second quarter of 2019 will increase the overall city position by 6 full-time employees. Details of the 2.5 positions and 9 reclassification adjustments are outlined below. In the executive department, which was previously approved, add 1 full-time employee census program manager, limited term, reclass the print and mail assistant from A1 to A3. Court services, add 1 full-time judge. Administrative services, reclass tax and licensing program manager, M27 to tax and licensing manager, M28, reclass finance analyst 3 to tax and license auditor 2, which is a N16 pay grade. Community and economic development, all previously approved. Reclass the permit center supervisor, M22, to permit services manager, M28. Reclass construction inspector supervisor, A26, to assistant development engineering manager, M30. Reclass assistant planner, N16, to housing programs manager, M27. Reclass the economic development manager, M32, to senior economic development manager, M33. Community services, all previously approved. Reclass the capital project coordinator, A28, to parks planning manager, M32. Reclass the golf professional, M22, to head golf professional, M25. And then public works, convert a half-time secretary 2, A7, to a full-time secretary 2, A7. Rates and fee adjustments, adjust various fees proposed in the new 2019-2020 fee schedule. The Committee of the Whole recommends council approve the proposed 2019-2020 mid-biennium budget amendments and place the associated legislation reflecting the above changes for first reading. This is signed by the council president.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Person.
Wow. Just for the public, this sounds like it is a lot of money and it is a lot of changes. But when you look at it and consider that they've all been discussed individually over a year time, and when we do this adjustment, going forward, we have to do it all at one time, so it sounds a lot more than it really is. So, and a lot of this has been done on individual committees, so it's been thoroughly vetted by that committee and then recommended to the whole council. So with that, I move the council concur in the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Person, second by Mr. Prince, that council concur with the Committee of the Whole report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, Mr. McIrvin.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the Community Services Committee has a couple of committee reports.
Okay, the first Community Services Committee report is regarding to the Municipal Arts Commission Code. The Community Services Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to approve an amendment to the Municipal Arts Commission Code clarifying various provisions and converting the 1% for arts calculation into an annual dollar amount in lieu of calculating the 1% for arts, clarifying maintenance responsibilities and addressing certain procedural questions. The committee further recommends the ordinance be presented for first reading and subsequent adoption. This is signed by the committee vice chair and member.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. McGurven.
Yes, so just to quickly explain this, would change rather than go through the exercise of calculating the 1% for the arts, we are just taking an average. So just to present it that we are not taking money away, this was something that was vetted by the Arts Commission. They fully support it. Plus it includes funding for maintenance to make sure that we can maintain the arts. So all in all, this will be a good thing for art and Renton. So I move the council concur with the Community Services Committee report.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. McGurven, second by Mr. Corman, that council concur with the Community Services Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay, the next report is regarding an ordinance amending Parks Commission regulations. The Community Services Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to approve the ordinance amending Parks Commission regulations in Municipal Code Title II, Chapter 9, which aligns Park Commission's regulations with current practice. This is signed by the committee vice chair and member.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr.
I
McGurven.
move that the council concur with the recommendation of the Community Services Committee.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. McGurven, second by Ms. Perez, that council concur with the Community Services Committee report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, Ms. Perez.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Pavoni.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Finance Committee has 5 committee reports tonight.
Okay, the first committee report is regarding vouchers. Approval of claims and payroll vouchers. The Finance Committee approves the following payments. Accounts payable, total payment of $12,994,169.31 for a number of vouchers and wire transfers. Payroll, a total payment of $1,713,608.44 for payroll vouchers, which includes 706 direct deposits and 17 checks. And then municipal court, a total payment of $10,385.33 for a number of vouchers. This is signed by the committee chair and member.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Pavoni.
I move the council concur with the Finance Committee reports.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Pavoni, second by Mr. Prince, that council concur with the Finance Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
The next report is regarding Symetra Life and Disability Insurance Contract. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to select Symetra as the city's new vendor for employee life and disability insurance in 2020 and to approve the contract with Symetra. The mayor and city clerk are authorized to sign the implementing documents when they are ready. This is signed by the committee chair and members.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Pavoni.
I move the council concur with the Finance Committee report.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Pavoni, second by Mr. Prince, that council concur with the Finance Committee report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, the next report is regarding the renewal of the Kaiser Permanente healthcare contract. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to approve the 2020 healthcare contract with Kaiser Permanente and authorizes the mayor and city clerk to sign the implementing documents when they are ready. The contract cost has increased 5.1%, a total cost of $192,750 for 2020. This is signed by the committee chair and vice chair.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Pavoni.
I move the council concur with the Finance Committee report.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Pavoni, second by Mr. Prince, that council concur with the Finance Committee report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, the next report is regarding the renewal of the Healthcare Management Administrator's contract for 2020. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to approve the 2020 healthcare contract with HMA, which is the Healthcare Management Administrators, and authorizes the mayor and city clerk to sign the implementing documents when they're ready. The contract is unchanged except for a 2.5% rate increase, total cost of $306,500 for 2020. This is signed by the committee chair and vice chair.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr.
I
Pavoni.
move the council concur with the Finance Committee report.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Pavoni, second by Mr. Corman, that the council concur with the Finance Committee report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay, the final Finance Committee report is regarding amending the city's municipal code 55, 56, 57, 58, 511, 525, and 526. The Finance Committee recommends the adoption of the proposed code amendments for Rent Municipal Code 55, 56, 57, 58, 511, 525, 526 that take effect January 1st, 2020 to comply with the new tax requirements from SHB 1403 and SSHB 1059. The committee further recommends that the ordinances regarding these matters be presented for first reading and subsequent adoption. This is signed by the committee chair and vice chair.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Pavoni.
I move the council concur with the Finance Committee report.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Pavoni, second by Mr. Prince, that council concur with the Finance Committee report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Jason, that was a lot of reading, and it just has begun. Now we're moving on to legislation. We have 18 ordinances for first reading and 2 ordinances for second and final reading.
Okay, here goes. First reading, first ordinance, an ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, authorizing the dollar amount and percentage increase for the property tax to be levied for the year 2020.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Person.
I move the ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Person, second by Mr. Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay, the next ordinance is also about property tax. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, establishing the property tax levy for the year 2020 for general city operational purposes in the amount of $22,012,189.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Corman.
move the ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Corman, second by Mr. Pavoni, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, the next ordinance. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending the City of Renton fiscal years 2019-2020 biennial budget in the amount of $7,804,570 as adopted by ordinance number 5898, and thereafter amended by ordinance numbers 5924 and 5930, and adopting an amended 2019-2020 City of Renton salary table.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr.
I
Corman.
move this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Corman, second by Mr. Pavoni, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, next ordinance, ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending Chapter 55 of the Renton Municipal Code by adding a new section 557, refund of license fee, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Corman.
I move this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Corman, second by Mr. Person, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, the next ordinance, an ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending Section 561 of the Renton Municipal Code, amending admission tax regulations, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Corman.
I move this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Corman, second by Mr. Pavoni, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay, the next ordinance, an ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, repealing Chapter 57 of the Renton Municipal Code, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Corman.
move this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Corman, second by Mr. Pavoni, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending gambling tax provisions in sections 585, 588, and 5816 of the Renton Municipal Code, repealing section 5817 of the Renton Municipal Code, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr.
I
Corman.
move this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Corman, second by Mr. Pavoni, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, an ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending Chapter 511 of the Renton Municipal Code, reorganizing, updating definitions, and adding administrative provisions related to utility tax regulations, providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Corman.
I move this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second?
Been moved by Mr. Corman, second by Mr. Pavoni, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, an ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending subsection 525-2J, section 525-8, and subsection 525-10V of the Renton Municipal Code, amending the business and occupation tax regulations, providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Corman.
move this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Corman, second by Mr. Pavoni, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Halfway there.
An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending subsections 526-6A and 526-6D of the Renton Municipal Code by updating regulations in accordance with the Tax Administrative Code Model Ordinance, providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Corman.
I move this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Corman, second by Mr. Pavoni, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay, an ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending sections 293, 294, 295, 296, and 297 of the Renton Municipal Code by revising Parks Commission regulations related to function, members, and term, aligning Parks Commission regulations with current practice, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr.
I
McGurven.
move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. McGurven, second by Mr. Pavoni, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, an ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending sections 286 and 287 of the Renton Municipal Code by reordering provisions, amending the city art collection regulations, repealing the 1% for Arts program, establishing the municipal art fund, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr.
I
McGurven.
move that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. McGurven, seconded by Mr. Pavoni, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, an ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, annexing certain territory to the City of Renton. This is the bill annexation, file number A-18-002.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move the ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Prince, second by Mr. Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Make sure I'm at the... Okay. An ordinance, I got a little confused.
Oh, we have to start over?
Yeah, no. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending Section 44140 of the Renton Municipal Code, adding temporary wireless communication facility standards, adding a definition of wireless communication facility, temporary, cleaning up formatting, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second?
Been moved by Mr. Prince, second by Mr. Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, an ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending Section 4970, adding a definition of channel migration zone in 41130, and amending the definition of Environmental Review Committee, ERC, in Section 41150 of the Renton Municipal Code by amending state environmental review procedures, providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move the ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second?
It's been moved by Mr. Prince, second by Mr. Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, an ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending subsection 43100B 1B4 and the building location and orientation table in subsection 43100E1 of the Renton Municipal Code, amending design district regulations, providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move the ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Prince, second by Mr. Corman, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending subsections 4145F2, 4770M, 4780K, 4780L, 47110C, 49200B1, and 49200E31, and the definition of subdivision phased in section 411-190 of the Renton Municipal Code, amending regulations related to phasing and duration of plats, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move the ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Prince, second by Mr. Pavoni, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, this is the last ordinance for first reading. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending subsections 4460N4 and 48120D19, sections 41110, 411-190, and 411-230, and Chapter 4-5 of the Renton Municipal Code, amending construction and demolition waste diversion regulations, including adding and amending definitions, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move the ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Prince, second by Mr. Pavoni, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. That represents a lot of work from Community and Economic Development.
Yeah.
So, good work. Okay, moving on to ordinances for second and final reading.
Okay, the first ordinance is regarding the Verizon small cell franchise. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, granting to Seattle SMSA Limited Partnership doing business as Verizon Wireless and its affiliates, successors, and assigns the right, privilege, authority, and non-exclusive franchise for 5 years to construct, maintain, operate, replace, and repair a telecommunications network for small cell technology in, across, over, along, under, through, and below certain designated public rights-of-way of the City of Renton, Washington.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
I move the ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
How about second and final reading tonight?
Second. Final reading.
You move it.
This is, oh, adopted as read. Adopted as read. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Second. Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Prince, second by Ms. Perez, that this ordinance be adopted as read and requires a roll call.
Hey, Mr. Person,
Aye.
Mr. McIrvin,
Aye.
Ms. Perez,
Aye.
Mr. Pavoni,
Aye.
Mr. Corman,
Aye.
and Mr. Prince.
Aye.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor, all ayes.
The ayes have it.
Okay, and the final ordinance is similar, but for New Singular Wireless. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, granting to New Singular Wireless PCS LLC and its affiliates, successors, and assigns the right, privilege, authority, and non-exclusive franchise for 5 years to construct, maintain, operate, replace, and repair a telecommunications network for small cell technology in, across, over, along, under, through, and below certain designated public rights-of-way of the City of Renton, Washington.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Perez.
I move the ordinance be adopted as read.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Perez, second by Mr. Corman, that this ordinance be adopted as read and requires a roll call.
Mr. Person,
Aye.
Mr. McIrvin,
Aye.
Ms. Perez,
Aye.
Mr. Pavoni,
Aye.
Mr. Corman,
Aye.
and Mr. Prince.
Aye.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor, all ayes.
The ayes have it. Thank you, Jason. Now, we'll give you a break and we'll move on to new business. Mr. Person.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, a couple things. First of all, this is the time of year that we select the council president and council pro tem. And according to policy, it has to be done before December. And the council president can, once it comes past 1st of November, call for that election. And I'm calling for that this evening. And with that, I would want to nominate for council president Ruth Perez and council pro tem Randy Corman.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the council appoint for council president for 2020 Ruth Perez and for President Pro Tem Randy Corman. Are there any any additional candidates or nominations? Do we need to close that first, Shane, or can we just go on with the vote?
Typically close it.
Yeah, you close it.
Okay, so we have a motion to
I
close the
move we
nom-
close the nominations.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Person, second by Mr. Pavoni, that the nominations for Council President and Council President Pro Tem be closed. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And now go with the election.
Now with that, on November 18th, Monday, November 18th. at
Wait, you still have to do the
Yeah.
Oh, I move, Mr. Mayor, I move, for Council President, Councilmember Perez, and for Council Pro Tem, Councilmember Randy Corman.
second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Person, seconded by Mr. Prince, that Councilmember Ruth Perez be selected as President of the Council for 2020, and Council Pro Tem, President Pro Tem, will be Randy Corman. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Do you know what the role of the, okay,
Mr. Mayor,
yes, sir.
I would like to thank all of my colleagues. I appreciate the trust you're putting in me as Council President Pro Tem, and I'm also, congratulations to Ruth Perez. She'll be an excellent council president.
Thank you, Mr. Corman. Okay, Mr. Person.
Okay, now I can announce the Committee on Committees will meet at 3:30, November 18th, Monday, at 3:30 PM in the council conference room, and there will be discussing the 2020 council committee assignments. And the committee will consist of Ruth Perez, myself, and Randy Corman. And then with that, the committee of the whole will meet at 5 PM on Monday, November 18th. And there's 4 issues. First one will be council policies, and that will be held in the conferencing center. Number 2 will be area mobility plan concepts for change presentation, and that'll be in the chambers at 6 PM, followed by a presentation, King County Metro I-Line Rapid Ride presentation, also in the chambers, and emerging issues. Oh, and I forgot to announce that next Monday, November 11th, which is Veterans Day, which we hope everybody celebrates, there will be no meeting.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McIrvin.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to announce the Transportation Committee will be meeting on Monday, November 18th at 4:30 PM in the council conference room. There are 3 items on the agenda. 1, speed limit on non-arterial residential neighborhood streets ordinance. 2, public alley designation. And 3, emerging issues in transportation. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Perez.
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Pavoni,
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Corman,
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
okay, and Mr. Prince.
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, what's the wish of the council?
Move we adjourn?
Second?
Been moved by Mr. Prince, second by Mr. Corman, that we adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
How many oppose? Okay, we're adjourned.